Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, January 14th, the year 2019. We are in committee meeting this evening with 4 committees. It is on or around 7:05 p.m. We will begin with Transportation Committee. I am sitting in for President Nisler this evening, and Andy Stone is here representing the executive branch. Thank you.
Excuse me, President Pro Tem, thank you. I'm Peter Katsas and chairing the Transportation Committee. Tonight I have 2 bullet points to speak about. The first one, we actually have a presentation from the Ohio University International Street Fair, which is to take place on April 6th. And tonight we have a few members of the International Student Union. Yes, and so please, if you'd like to present. We have Diane Cahill is here, along with, and I apologize because I do not have your last names, but Carla and Ami are presenting tonight. So please.
First, thank you all for this time and hearing us for our request. I'm Carla Trana, the president of the International Student Union.
Hi, my name is Ami Sherson. I'm the vice president of the International Student Union and also the community chairman of the I-Week committee.
So the reason that we are here today is because we would like to request the Athens City Council to block the portion of Union Street between the Court Street and University Terrace to hold our annual International Street Fair on April 6th. The reason in the past the street fair has been on Court Street, but because we decided to change the street fair to fall on the same weekend as Mom Weekend, to attract more people and for the moms of Ohio University students to see, what kind of events our community has, and just target more a different audience, which is why we changed the date. But there was in solidarity or to support the local businesses instead of having it on Court Street, which could block or potentially hinder some of their businesses. We were able to work out to have it on Union Street, and we would request the same spot this year. After the street fair last year, we took a survey, and there's a very positive feedback that we received. The community that filled out the survey really liked the new location. And we feel like it's a nice place and a way to kind of start a new tradition here at Athens. So Ami will speak more about the event and the performance and just know how the street fair will run.
So the placement of the stage was right in front of College Green, and we placed the flags there, and it was absolutely beautiful. People were able to walk down the street and go to different vendors, learn about the organizations, and then listen to really quality music. And so we had a band coming in from Brooklyn, New York called Red Barat. They're a fusion between jazz and also Indian bhangra music, and people loved it. People came in, and we got such great reviews. It was really funny because it was very cold outside, but we were surprised with how much support people had. They were bundled up and ready to dance. So it's really amazing. And so this coming year, we hope to continue that same passion. And so we'd love to have more performances and more of these vendors and really create that wonderful environment that we had last year. Hopefully better weather, but.
Do you guys have any questions for us?
I do.
Please.
Actually, first I'd like to say I love the street fair. I enjoyed it last year. The music was wonderful. The venue was perfect.
Thank you.
Everything. It's a question in general, I suppose. It's my understanding that the Rotary Club had approached council earlier about doing a pizza day during Mom's Weekend, closing off part of Union Street. Has anyone from the Rotary contacted you at all?
We have not heard anything. Nope.
Okay, well, that was just my question,
okay.
Whether anyone's contacted you.
I can add to that. I know that administration has been in contact with the Rotary, and they decided that it was too many events happening on the same day. So they're still working through that, and this date is for the International Street Fair.
Good. Ready to go. Thank you.
Okay. So. I would mention that this is the same request that for street closure as it was last year. So it's between it's on East Union between Court Street and University Terrace, and this is Saturday, April 6th, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And so, and that was my understanding. There's no, it's exactly the same as
Yes.
the request as last year. So,
And we felt it worked perfectly the way traffic was, and then it just was a really nice layout for our member organizations and just for other community members and students who participated.
great. Well, thank you for continuing the tradition. I can't even. It's got to be at least 40 years old. That's just my. That's just this working up here. I mean, I haven't been a part of it or anything like that, but it's except for being in attendance. So, so thank you. And,
last year was the 50th anniversary.
50th anniversary. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Time flies. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any comments from the administration? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Apologize.
That's all right.
The second bullet point that I have tonight on Transportation Committee is extremely straightforward. We have 2 ODOT bridge painting projects that are happening within the city. Once again, this is ODOT's. They need to just have us clear the projects. This is 100% on them for them to complete these projects. Both of them are bridges on US 33. One of them is the old bridge that goes over the old B&O railroad. So this is, I guess, right in between the Near East Side and the Far East Side. And then the second one is going to be the bridge then that just follows right after that to the east, which would be the over the Hocking River. The first one, the old railroad bridge, they're looking to start in May of 2019. The second one, they're looking for a January start on the project, but it may be considered as part of 2019, just depending on how the season goes. But they're requesting an ordinance for the work being done on both of these. Do we have any specific questions? Yes, Member Crowell?
Just slight clarification, sorry. So the one is right there by the water treatment plant? Wastewater treatment plant.
They both are right by the wastewater.
Yeah. And the other one, I'm sorry, and I mean, I meant traveling east on US 33, although technically it's probably south at that point.
Okay.
So it's those 2 bridges, they're one right after the other, very close to the 3350 junction interchange.
So not locations where we would think about putting up a City of Athens welcoming sign. They're sort of off the...
No, they're not.
Right,
They're not.
okay, that's my only point.
There's another location for that, but not, this is not one of those.
Right, okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay. Do we have additional questions from anyone else? All right, and with that, we are done with Transportation Committee tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Katsas. Moving on to Planning and Development Committee, which is chaired by Councilmember Chris Fall and includes Jeff Reisner, Patrick McGee, and Sarah Grace. There have been some changes to the 2019 committee assignments, and I apologize for not acknowledging the initial changes there with Transportation, including Pete Katsas, Patrick McGee, and Sam Crowell. And now we turn it over to Chris Fall. Thank you.
Thank you. There are 4 items on the agenda for this evening. Put this on so I don't get in trouble, right? Okay. The first is the annexation process that we are continuing with Hillcrest Drive parcel. As everybody knows, or may be excited to know, that the annexation process has several steps that it has to go through. And this is one of the process is to identify the services that the city will provide to this property, to the annexation property, which includes sewer, water, and emergency services, street maintenance, all those other things that you associate with living within the city. Is there anything to add?
No, I mean, it would be the same services that any of the rest of the Far East Side Neighborhood Association and the remainder of the city would have.
Great. Questions from the committee?
Is this currently undeveloped property?
No.
No, it's this.
It's one half of a developed parcel. It's the other. It's basically two parcels where there's one house on two parcels. One parcel is in, one parcel is out. The second parcel would be in if were to be annexed.
Right.
Thank you.
It's another one of those cleaning processes that sometimes we have to go through. The second item is an easement request for Athens Station, and I understand it's for putting in coaxial or for fiber optic. Is that conduit?
Not exactly.
Okay.
This is something different. This is a request from Ohio University in conjunction with renovations to their utilities in the vicinity of the Loushey plant, and in support of the new HCOM, and then the research center, the engineering research center. There's some changes that have to happen around the Loushey plant. If you look at the Athens Station parcel for the project, the panel or the committee is probably familiar that we have an 80-year lease or a 40-year lease, and then two 20-year renewals with the Athens Station apartments and the leaseholder for that. But the land underneath is owned by the city of Athens. So if there needed to be an easement granted, the city would have to grant it, as well as it'd be signed off by the leaseholder. In this case, it's the extreme southernmost tip of the parcel, the Athens Station parcel, the furthest south parcel, almost into where the old river was before the river was moved. It's for a very small triangle about the size of this desk behind the Ohio University Fleet Maintenance Building. So it really isn't anywhere near any public street or public service. It's just a portion of land that the city owns. And so the administration has no objection to it and would like to help Ohio University so that they can stay on their construction timeline by granting.
Okay. Is this going to be an easement under the new easement process that we have established?
Well, under the new Title 49 right-of-way legislation, no. This will be a separate thing because it's a standalone parcel. It's not a city right-of-way. So it would actually be an easement. and
like it runs with the title.
Correct. It'll run with the title. Okay. So if the city were ever to divest of that property, Ohio University would retain that easement.
Retain the easement. Okay, great. Thank you. Third is Income Tax Review Board, which Kathy Heck can describe what they do. But this is basically amending the review board ACC to align with the ORC, which is the Athens code, the code that is our city code, has to align with the Ohio Revised Code, and this will be the process that we help to align them. So.
Correct.
Yep.
They, as you know, they've been making a lot of changes to our tax code at the state level, and so when that happens, we have to bring our local code into line with that. And so the makeup of the tax committee, I believe it's always been 3 people, but who serves and who appoints who. I think in the past our office, had appointed 3 people. We actually don't use that board very often. Not that many people appeal a decision, and so which is fine though. It's only been 2 or 3 years since we did have an appeal filed, and both sides write up their side, and then the appeals board reads it and makes their decision. And it's no one from the tax department on there or the mayor, and so it should be a neutral board just reading the facts. And of course we give them the code references to follow so they can see what our law is and why we made the decision that we did. So it's just it's a change in our code to match it up with the state law.
The wording, and it's important that the wording matches up.
Yes.
There's probably going to be other ones down the line because of some of the stuff they did in the lame duck, like the stand your ground and stuff. So this will be something else. That
yes, we are still fighting some of the changes, and so I haven't asked you to make changes. As you know, our tax code is hard to read and complicated, and we just don't really want to have to go in and make a bunch of changes and then try to figure out how to change it and catch the little things that we might have missed down the line. So we try to wait until we know what we really need in there before we bring it to council. And so, yeah, there will be some more changes down the line, but this one is pretty basic. And another thing, I talked to Clerk, of course, Debbie Walker today, and we talked about the fact that the wording in the Ohio Revised Code is often very wordy and includes requirements for counties and townships and villages in the same, section or title of the code. And so we don't quote it word for word. We just have to get the gist of what we need in there. So you'll see that if you can compare. As we're a statutory city, most of our code is reflective of the ORC and requirements for cities, but it doesn't very often read exact. There'll be a lot of phrases that will be the same, but not all of them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Homework.
Any questions?
Cleaning sort of thing. And the last one is also another amendment to the Athens City Code. So we're going to amend the ordinance 0818, which is what happened to some of the initiatives that they were put into a certain title. We would like to change the title, create Title 97, which is a title of a chapter, if you want to look at it that way, where we will put our citizen passed initiatives into as law, so that they'll be in there, kind of on their own, and everybody can find them easily.
I can speak to a little bit more, Council Member Fall. So last year we passed the right-of-way legislation, the comprehensive right-of-way legislation, and we titled it Athens City Code Title 49. Well, it turns out that Ordinance 0818 was also titled Title 49. It just hadn't been codified yet, and that was the ordinance that this body passed in the beginning of 2018 to talk about how to receive citizen petitions. And so we thought it would actually make more sense just to change that title from 49 to 97, and it fits real well with the location of the code, and it'll be easy to read once it gets codified. So it's really just a naming convention.
Yeah. But then it will just be easier for other people to look and identify the initiatives that our citizens have passed. So, is there any questions on that? Okay. I stand adjourned for this committee.
Thank you, Council Member. That moves us to the Finance and Personnel Committee part of the agenda, which is chaired by Councilmember Jeff Reisner and includes myself, Sam Crowell, and Peter Katsas.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem.
Welcome.
The Finance and Personnel Committee has recently been expanded. We now have Councilmember Pete Costas as a fourth member. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Hope you have fun.
Always do.
We have two items to talk about tonight: appropriations transfers and a credit card policy. So for appropriations transfers, we have the City Service Safety Director and the Auditor, who can speak to whatever they want to transfer and move around.
You want me to start? Or you want to? Okay, so one item that is an appropriation that's necessary that we added here recently was an oversight during the budgeting process, and it had to do with Athens Community Television. And so we didn't put enough money into the TC300s for Athens Community Television, and so this is an appropriation to cover the expenditure that we use every year when we enter into the contract for ACTV. So one item that I had.
I was just handed here a proposed ordinance. $2,150 to General Fund Treasurer 101103.
I'm sorry, which one was that?
That was the treasurer one. We talked about that.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Peter.
Let's see.
There's an oversight in the treasurer's budget.
Okay.
For 200 and 300 supplies mostly, and then 500's $200. She wants to get a printer.
Was that a print? No, scanner.
Scanner.
Well, yeah.
Sorry.
I understand the city right now is going through a printer review audit. So how are we doing on that? Not to go off on a tangent, but it's going to cost money somewhere.
You know, the accuracy of the first round of the audit is not to the level that we'd like it to be. So we'd like to, before we take any action on the audit, we'd like to go back with the vendor and ask them to increase the accuracy of their audit. Basically.
Okay.
So, and we may decide that this isn't a vendor we're interested in, and we may look at a different vendor. Okay. No money's been expended.
All right. I see $420 to enhancement fund 250 TC 300 transaction code for real estate taxes, and $7,014 to wheel tax fund 226 transaction code 500 for additional local share of ODOT urban paving program. Some numbers, SR 56 resurfacing.
Right, that's so last year, you know, the city participates in the urban paving program, which says that we ODOT will cover 80% of cost for state routes that are paved inside the city limits, other than the highest functional classification like 50 and 33, which in those cases ODOT in most cases pays 100% of those. But for 682 and 56, the city, and you talked about this last year, the city pays 20% when ODOT repaves there, and so we basically have minor maintenance responsibility for those routes, but we get, you know, 4/5 of it paid for by the state when they come through and they pave. And so they bid that job. You gave them authorization to participate, to do it last year and for us to participate, and the bids came in higher than they expected, so they're requesting an additional $7,000 for that. And this is for 56 west of 682.
Okay.
So it's under the threshold of where we'd have to authorize a separate ordinance for the expenditure, but the appropriation didn't have anything in that particular fund as part of the budget. So we used all last year's money, so that's why this would go.
Anything else?
I was just going to add that the property taxes in the enhancement fund for Station Street, for the small amount of property that we pay property tax on there. And we do have two other things that I don't have numbers for yet. One is there were no internal service admin transfers put in 271. Andy did those calculations for the budget this year, so there should be some in 270 and 271. So I don't know if it all got put in 270. And then the other one is the internal admin support and parking enforcement. It's at 3,500, but it's not calculated. It went to the parking garage fund instead of all parking enforcement.
I see.
Which really the employees and the vehicles, you know, computers and vehicles are out of, well, it's just there's more going on in parking enforcement than there is parking garage. So I don't know what the numbers are with that. So that would be something.
The 271, we didn't put anything. We put everything against 270 on that, and that was probably for internal service, and that probably could have been split between those two.
It needs to be split, and the same with the parking enforcement and parking garage.
Yeah, that was by design, but if we can't do it that way, then we'll have to go back to the other one. So
yeah, well, it shouldn't amount to an amount of money that we can't handle. So, and then I don't know about the internal fund transfer, if you wanted to discuss that one yet or not.
Which one was that?
The judges.
Yeah, we can talk about that. So, you know, one of the things as we built the budget, we talked about the outlay, or the way that we pay for internal service. So internal service is your fleet maintenance and your computer and IT operation citywide. Historically, the 101, 106 fund is what pays the internal service IT portion of the court. The judge has, the municipal court has several proprietary funds, and one of the allowed expenses in those proprietary funds is computerization of the court. So as we were building the budget last year, rather than have general fund 101, 106 be the portion of the budget that pay that transfer to the internal service for computerization of the court, or basically that share of the IT department, we thought it more appropriate to use one of those proprietary computer funds because it was an allowed expense. In the budget, we built it to be the clerk's computer fund, so Fund 231. 231, and that fund can't support it in 2018 with the money that's, I'm sorry, 2019 with the money that's in it, plus what we anticipate coming in. However, there is money in 230, and 230 will support it, and so we're going to request that that the council transfer, do an interfund transfer between 230 and 231. 230
is the judge's computer fund, and then 231 is the clerk's computer fund. So.
Any idea what the amounts are?
I don't have it off the top of my head. It's in the budget. I have to go back and look at the budget. If I pull it up, I'll show you.
All right. We can discuss it tomorrow.
Yep, absolutely. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough to be able to pay for the operation of the IT department that the court places on the IT department.
Anything else?
I don't think so for me.
All right.
Did we capture that Fund 215, the one that I talked about? Is that on here?
It's a separate ordinance.
It's a separate ordinance. Okay, gotcha.
And next, credit card policy. We're finally...
Looks like we finally have one.
Yes, finally have one.
Although we're not, people are still sending out requesting drafts around the state on my listserv, so we're not really behind most of the other entities. It's a pretty complicated piece of legislation that we've never had to deal with before. So I sent our final draft out after we met last Tuesday. That would be the finance chair and the service safety director and the mayor. And we made just a few more changes to the draft, which I left highlighted in yellow in case anybody had any questions, to address a couple questions about, maintenance agreements and term contracts were two things we didn't really think should be paid that way. However, sometimes we don't have a choice, so we just put, unless approved by the auditor. I'm not going to say no if somebody needs that and we can't pay it any other way. So we added some things. Andy had reviewed the one before that I sent out, and we made some of his changes. And the legislatively appointed compliance officer, that's still in your wheelhouse, and a form to sign off on monthly has to be
right.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but that it's been reviewed by council.
Who would create the form that has to be signed off on?
Well, I mean, I can try to recreate it, but it's your form that the council president has to sign off on. So, we can come up with a draft, but it would have to be your
not the council president, but the person that's appointed by council to review.
No, council president is supposed to sign off on it, on our reports, the credit card bills monthly. And then the compliance officer does quarterly reviews of who has cards, their limits, and stuff like that. And then annually a report.
The compliance officer.
So, yeah. Okay. So the thing about having the compliance officer, just as a reminder, if we don't, then I have to keep physical control of everybody's credit cards, which is just really not going to work for the city. Not that many departments, well, several have them, but one of them is police. Sometimes the pumps that are down, they have to be able to use the card at night to buy gas and things like that. And there are emergencies that happen, when I'm not there. So it's better for them to have someone in their department, and then there's a sign out form that should be attached, so that we know who has them when, and that's a requirement. The majority of this bill or this policy is actually copied from the bill and the auditor of state's bulletin. They're recommended, and their interpretation of any bills and what they want to see in here, because they're going to audit us on this next time around. They'll probably want to see this when they come in this spring and summer. But if you have any other, things you want to put in there, you know, just let us know. And
Before I open this up to the rest of the committee, I want to read this. The section on page 4 of 6, periodic review of compliance officer / legislative authority reporting. The legislative authority shall appoint a compliance officer. The compliance officer may not use a credit card account and may not authorize an officer or employee to use a credit card account. The compliance officer and the legislative authority, i.e. council, at least quarterly must review the number of cards and accounts issued, the number of active cards and accounts issued, the cards and accounts expiration date, and the cards and accounts credit limit. And then we go on to, then takes off what the city auditor must present monthly reports. Back to the compliance officer. Okay, the legislative authority is city council. Okay, so.
And just for the record, that paragraph and the next one are copied from the Auditor of State Bulletin on how to do your policy.
Right. So getting to who the compliance officer should be, I believe the feeling is it should be a member of council itself. And the most logical person on council to do that is the President Pro Tem. 2 reasons. One is the President Pro Tem is the senior officer of the council. And the other is we trust him. So unless
it's fine with me.
The President Pro Tem objects, I suggest that the council will, we could formally vote on it Monday, but once the policy is adopted, then it'll be your bailiwick.
I don't get a feeling there should be any issue with that.
I don't either.
Council president shouldn't, because she'll be signing off that they've been reviewed.
Well, the council president technically is not really council.
Yeah.
The council president is actually in the executive branch. I mean, when the mayor is not here, and if if our president was available, she would be acting mayor.
Right.
Okay, which to me seems a conflict of interest when you're dealing with the credit card policy, because who else is more authorized to use credit cards than the mayor?
Yeah.
So it should be someone who is neutral in that.
Right. So someone else, and
so yeah. So
it's really up to you guys, but
well, that's what I'm going to put forward.
Conflict there, yeah.
So
yeah.
We'll help, man. We'll help make it easy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So we'll help make it easy.
Okay,
for you.
thanks.
Well, just to throw it out there, we've already done. The deputy auditor has done a spreadsheet and sent it out to all the departments, and it lists, the department whose name is on the card. One of the other requirements is that it has City of Athens or Athens City on it, the expiration date and the limit. And so we've already gathered that information for review. So,
but I think it's also important that the person who is the compliance officer, it should not be a named person. It should be an office that follows, that continues on from now on. Sooner or later, the current President Pro Tem may decide, oh, I don't want to be President Pro Tem anymore. I may want to retire. A new President Pro Tem will have to take their place. Well, if we simply name a person to be the compliance officer, if that person disappears, then we have to name a new person. If we keep it within an office, as we have here, then that step is not necessary.
I agree, and that's why on the first page, the officers and positions, I listed the officers, which are the elected officials, service safety director, and rather than any specific position, and because the fact is, the service safety director can approve a department head getting one. He's got a lot of departments he's over, and so yeah, I didn't think we should get that specific there. However, he will be responsible, just like I would be if I allow someone else in my office to get a card. But so these are the people who are responsible without listing specific positions, but they're the ones that have the authority to let a position have a card.
Well,
Does that make sense?
I think the main thing is we get this draft, up for a vote.
Yeah.
As soon as possible. Do a first reading next Monday, and let's see how it works out.
Okay.
I know it's not going to be perfect the first time, and I'm sure we're going to find a flaw somewhere 6 months from now, a year from now. And if there is, well, we'll fix it. I mean, that's what we do. It's a work in progress.
If I may, it's not significantly different than how we're doing business today. Just these are additional checks and balances for credit that are a good idea anyway. And nobody wants to be more regulated than they have to be, but if the state says this is what you're doing, then this is what you're doing. And
I'm sure Standard & Moody's wouldn't care either. It looks.
And the audited, the draft that Auditor Hecht wrote and then we all worked on together, I think is a workable document. So, it's good. It's just good housekeeping.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just want to remind you that we're supposed to have this in place by February 2nd.
February 2nd.
Well, we can do, 2 readings? Can we get 2 readings in before? Just one then, okay. Member Crowell?
Auditor Hecht, I just had one question about one of the most recent changes highlighted on page 3. Exceptions will be made for online vendors who do not recognize our tax-exempt status. Are there specific sort of transactions that are not tax-exempt transactions, or is this just when it falls through the cracks and the online system doesn't recognize?
No, it's different. It would be the actual vendor or online retailer that we're using, that they don't do that. Especially online, because you know how the rules are about taxes now, and different states are passing laws and whether they should be taxing everyone or not. And so if they are situated in a state that doesn't require them to collect taxes.
Oh, so that's a possibility. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So tax exempt status is not a
It's not automatic everywhere
automatic.
at all.
Okay.
No, you're not going to get that at McDonald's or Wendy's. There's a lot of places that don't accept that. And it's not against the law for us to pay taxes. We just don't have to because we are tax exempt, so we don't want to if we can help it. But that doesn't mean we don't end up paying taxes from time to time.
Okay.
We won't use the credit card at McDonald's or Wendy's.
Yeah, and I would assume that large purchases aren't using a credit card either, so this is not like we're paying lots of taxes in a situation.
Well, and I mean, I just don't want to name any names or vendors, but you know,
Well,
maybe you'll see it
You're right.
probably on the cards when you do your review, because all the charges will be attached to the documents for review monthly.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
I'm good.
Clear as mud?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Auditor.
Anything else? State Service Director? Well, in that case, that concludes Finance and Personnel.
Thank you, Councilmember Reisner. Appreciate it. Moving on to our last committee for the evening, the City and Safety Services Committee, which I will be chairing and accompanied by Chris Fall and Sarah Grace. We have a few bullet points to discuss and some insight as well from our City Service Safety Director. The first talking point is the need for softening salt at the water treatment plant. In meeting with the City Service Safety Director, Mr. Stone was able to inform me that the current operation is working more succinctly and better, which has led to a savings of thousands of dollars, and then the need for the city to request less tons than previously. So that's exciting news, and I appreciate for that update, and appreciate the hard work from that department.
Absolutely.
Approximately 400 less tons.
We're requesting the authority to bid 400 tons less this year than we did last year. And so if you can, we didn't end up spending, like we bid that last year, we didn't end up using that much salt. Last year we had the authority to bid it, and we bid it that much, but we didn't use that much. We don't need to bid that much anymore because we're being much more efficient in the operation. So, I mean, just for an order of magnitude, cost at $100 a ton, which is not not too far off what it is. That's $40,000 less a year in savings. And that's 100% due to the water plant staff, careful operation and their maintenance of the softener facilities there at the plant. So it's just better operation by the plant staff, and I'm very proud of them for the work that they've been doing.
And thank you.
One thing we may do is, and I got to work with the law director to see how to do this, we may request authorization to bid for 2 years, and then the appropriation would be this year, and then the appropriation would be next year. The appropriation's actually already been made as part of the budget, so, but I got to make sure I can do that, and so I'll get that worked out between now and next week.
Thank you. Any questions, fellow council members? Thank you, Mr. Stone. Moving on to the cost of water connection and a need to amend and remove section 5.03.05. My understanding as well is that the water rates and fees to amend to move to Title I, these two are tied together. Essentially paperwork and mimicking some of the work we did in previous sessions. Does that sound accurate?
It does. It does. We've been trying as a way to just kind of clean up our code to move all of the references to specific fees, unless for some reason they need to be buried throughout and sprinkled throughout the code in other places, trying to move all those references to fees to Title I. And so we would ask that you would amend it so that it says, fees set by a separate ordinance, and then that separate ordinance puts those fees in Title I. So it's not an increase in fees or anything, it's just moving of where they appear in the code.
Right. Which we've done just recently with some
with
of
a lot
the
of other things.
fees.
This is just one that we
So,
hadn't.
and it makes sense, because then that way you have, basically a rating sheet of how much all the different fees are right in front of you without going through the code.
Yep, consolidated list.
Yep.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Mr. Stone. Any other comments? Our clerk was also nodding in conjunction with this as well, so that's important. No further questions on that. We'll move forward to ACTV, authorized annual contract expenditure, which Mr. Stone referenced in the Finance and Personnel Committee, if I recall. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So there's a need to request $66,000.
It is.
And that would be Fund 215. And Mr. Reisner, interestingly enough, is also a board member of ACTV. So if you care to comment or mention anything or discuss this too, you're more than welcome at the podium too, since this is within your bailiwick. Any questions or comments up here?
No one.
I
can just speak to it. It's the same contract as last year. This is in order to, it's funded by revenue that comes from the franchise fees paid by the video service provider in Athens. The video service provider in Athens that's registered with the state of Ohio is Spectrum. And so there's a certain amount of money that comes every year. Some of that money goes to help us operate the general fund, and some of that money goes to help us operate Athens Community Television. Athens Community Television has been around the city for a long time, and there's a nonprofit that we contract with every year to actually operate that Athens Community Television, that channel, or those couple channels that we have. There's no increase. We didn't put, what I mentioned is we failed to get that in the budget. So this would just basically appropriate that money, but then also, since it's greater than $50,000, I'll need authority from the council to enter into the agreement.
Which is a good talking point or educational moment for all of us, as well as those on TV land in the audience. So amounts over $50,000 do require council's acknowledgement and signature. Less than that, the executive branch is able to take care of business. Any other questions or comments?
One note on this is in the long run, the revenue stream that pays for this is that franchise fee that comes from, that's set by the state, that comes from video service providers. As people, what's called cut the cord, basically go to internet only and decide that they're going to watch TV if they're going to watch TV, they're going to do it by just Netflix or just Hulu or just some other type of streaming service and not your traditional cable as their method of watching TV, that revenue stream will decrease over time. And so unless state law changes, it's something for planning into the future. I think we're fine now. We're fine probably a couple of years into the future. But as the generationally, people will get away from that traditional, what you think of as your cable box and your cable line that comes in, you pay your monthly cable bill, as there's more of a kind of pick and choose model out there. That franchise fee may not follow it at the state level, and that money may decrease. So that's something we need to think about in the long term.
Thank you, sir.
So we are.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very valid point. Any other questions or comments? Or Mr. Reisner, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I could.
Mr. Green is the director, correct, down there, and he's been with ACTV for a number of years now, and we do periodically get a presentation from him here as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
He's required to give an annual report, so I think that'll be coming up sometime this year, probably February, I think. What I want to speak to is something that Director Stone touched on, was the declining fees that are coming from the cable company because of the number of people who are starting to find alternative ways of watching television rather than actual through the cable. Looking at the data that's been coming in for the past couple of years and projecting in the future, he's right. The revenues are declining, and they're declining steeply. It's not a gentle decline; it's a rapid. In fact, it's been dropping far more than I would have thought. One example that I found that the change that's happening. I'm from the TV generation, and it's hard for me to even envision watching television through the internet. That's just something that I don't envision. But for the new generation, like the students in the dorms, it's come to the point where most of them are not subscribing to cable. They're subscribing to the internet. And that's where they're getting their entertainment and their news and so on. And since they're doing that, then those franchise fees that we would be generating to pay for our community television aren't being generated. So it is something that we definitely need to plan on in the future. Where will this go, and how will we continue to provide it? Because I think ACTV is something that is worthy of the city. I think it's a good thing, but maybe we will be changing the model. Maybe we will no longer be using our television channel, channel 1000 and whatever it is, 21, 22, to provide things like for the government channels. Maybe we will have to change our model and start doing just like the new generation is doing through the internet. Through Hulu, through Netflix, through something else. And now is the time to start planning for it. So just forewarned is forearmed.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Reisner? Thank you, sir. It is interesting to think about. Moving on to the last bullet point for the evening is a conversation and presentation regarding street light conversion. This is new and exciting. We do have a speaker here this evening. Mr. Stone and I talked about this briefly in the past, and I believe Public Works Director Mr. Hetty and I also talked briefly about this at one point, ever so slightly. But it's exciting for us to consider and look at. I will not be the expert in this, so I will acquiesce to the experts. Thank you.
Right, I'll get started. So this evening we've got Morgan Melendrez. Did I say that right? Yeah. All right. From Tango Lighting, who I've been working with for about a year now. And so if you want to go ahead and take the podium, I'll just get everything started, and then he'll get into his presentation. Morgan contacted me over a year ago asking about what we pay on our street lighting, and my experience since I've worked here and started here in 2003 is we just send the bill every month to pay for street lights. We do our best to make sure that our count is correct so that we're not getting overbilled by the streetlight provider, which in our case is American Electric Power, for about 2/3 of our streetlights in the city, but you kind of got to take what they give you as far as the price goes, because nobody wants less light in the city. Nobody ever says, you know what, I really like you to take away about 10 or 20 streetlights from this particular road. That never happens. It's always, I want more light because this intersection is too dark, or it's too dark on this section of street. That ends up being kind of my experience with it. The fees we get charged for 2/3 of our streetlights, those are the ones that we rent from American Electric Power, are relatively high, and they're high for a couple reasons. Number one, American Electric Power has no interest in converting from high pressure sodium, which are the high watt consuming lights. It's just not in their program to convert to LED like we've done for our city-owned lights. And then number two, there's a flat maintenance fee that's charged per fixture in order for bulbs to be changed if a light burns out. And then we report a bulb being out to American Electric Power, and they come around and they fix the bulb, and we keep going, but we continue to get that flat fee every month. We pay about $200,000 a year, and that's out of the general fund for street lighting. And like I mentioned, about 2/3 of those are rented from AEP, and 1/3 of those are owned by the city and metered. Every single light that I have in the city has been converted to LED or compact fluorescent. I still have a few compact fluorescent, but we don't have any old style bulbs any longer. So we're doing the best we can with our city-owned lights to, number one, maintain them cheaply, and number two, use the least amount of electricity as I can.
And examples of city-owned lights would be?
Some of the lower decorative lights, for instance, the lights on Court Street, the lights on Richland Avenue and the recent projects that we've done there, the lights on North 1804 Way, the project that we just finished there on the east side, the lights along the 5033 bypass that are inside the city limits. But the lights that are owned by American Electric Power are your traditional Cobra head lights that you see attached to the wooden power poles in different places around the city. And there's about 750 of those, plus or minus, I think. So when Morgan contacted me, I kind of gave him some information, and he used that data and crunched it. I kind of put it on the back burner. And then when Director Hetty arrived, he kind of picked it back up off the back burner, and we looked at it again. He went to a presentation that Tanco did up in North Ohio, and it looks like there's a lot of opportunity, and this is something that both he and I are very excited about. And Morgan happened to be in Ohio this week, going to Cleveland or Northern Ohio to talk to another client. And he said, well, I can drive by and talk to City Council if you'd like me to. And even though we're not ready to move forward on legislation yet, I thought I'm going to take the opportunity to have him come by and talk about his program so that you can learn about it, so that later in the year when I am ready to move on legislation that you've already heard from someone who's an expert and who's done this in communities all around the United States. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and put up the presentation that you sent to me, and we can kind of go through that real quickly.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. Council, nice to meet everyone. My name is Morgan Melendrez. I'm with Tanco Lighting, and just want to give you an introduction as to what our company does in regards to street lighting across the country and what we want to do here in Athens in particular. So today we're just going to go through street lighting in Ohio. Who is Tanco Lighting? Why am I here today speaking with all of you? Discuss the scope of work that we've looked into, doing an audit of the existing streetlight system, and then doing a streetlight design for the whole city. And then how we can help you moving forward. And if there are any questions, feel free to raise your hand or interrupt me at any point. So LED street lighting is new to Ohio. It's been in the news quite regularly. Street lighting has a significant impact on nighttime public safety. And looking into LEDs, this is something that they have offer better lighting and lumens on the right of way. And if Athens were to move forward with something like this, you'd certainly be ahead of the curve. As Andy mentioned, utilities, it's not in their best interest to move forward with LED street lighting. They typically drag their feet because it is a cash cow for them. So we are here to shine some light on what the other options are for Athens to realize the energy savings and what other options we have discussed for your system here. So who is Tanco Lighting? Tanco Lighting is a streetlight only firm based in San Francisco, California. We help municipalities transition from utility-owned high-pressure sodium system to city-owned LED. And I'm going to go into all the reasons as to why you would want to do that. And it's something that's going to be a huge trend here in Ohio. I am meeting with a few other municipalities this week, and I'm glad to be here today to share what that looks like. So we have the widest portfolio of streetlight conversions around the country. We are statewide vendors in both Connecticut and Massachusetts. We have overall converted over 400,000 streetlights across the country, and understand that every community is different, and we'll be able to provide you with a specific LED conversion specific to Athens, your street types, and your community, because no two municipalities are the same, and we have a wide portfolio of different sizes, communities, and have a very good knowledge on the LED streetlight market. So acquisition, and in this case it's would be AEP as your current utility provider. So AEP provides that service to you right now. So we are looking at acquiring that system from your utility provider. State legislation allows that. There's state law that allows municipalities to purchase streetlight systems from your public utility, as well as there have been streetlight acquisitions in Ohio already, and we are referencing those points when we reach out to the utility on your behalf if this were something you would want to pursue, and simply because of the points I'm about to make right now as to why you would want to own your system. But there are municipalities that do own their system currently in Ohio. Here's a few of them, varying in all sizes. We have Cleveland, Cuyahoga Falls, Painesville, Hamilton, Hudson, Amherst, just to name a few that own their streetlight system. And then here are some of the reasons as to why Athens should own your streetlight system, that 2/3 that we were discussing.
Those look like Benjamins.
Yeah. So maximizing the municipal savings. Utilities make a lot of money off street lighting, and in many cases this is an asset that has been fully depreciated. So we're proposing that the city purchase the system and switch to energy only from your utility provider. AEP will always be providing that energy, but then also looking at maintenance. So if that's something the city would like to take on internally or subcontract out. So improved maintenance response. Tanko specializes in these conversions. We provide an online call forum as well as a call center to report those outages, very similar to what you have with your current utility provider. Increased control over your design. So Tanko wants to reach out to the city, understand which areas need more lighting and maybe which areas need less lighting. With Ohio University right here, we definitely want to take that into consideration when doing the streetlight conversion to make sure that all the areas are properly lit, and want to gain feedback from council, from Public Works, from the fire department, police department. All of that we take into consideration when doing an LED streetlight conversion. As well as smart city technologies. Having an LED system allows the city to look into other revenue generating streams like small cell. So by owning the system, you have access to all the data that a streetlight can take in. And by renting the system from your utility, you don't have that ability. So those are the main reasons as to why municipalities are looking at acquiring their streetlight systems throughout the state. This is the process by which a LED streetlight conversion goes by. So it begins with a GIS audit, understanding what you're purchasing, if you're being billed correctly, reconciling what we find in the field versus your utility records, doing a design throughout the whole city, procuring. The city has the ability to look at different manufacturers and understand the different efficiencies that each of those offer. Install the new LED system, commissioning, final reporting, making sure that your utility bills reflect that decrease in energy usage, as well as looking at maintenance options once you own the system. And it's not a large undertaking, so we want to provide you with an understanding of what you're getting into. So one of the things that we discussed in the scope of work, at least for the beginning, was doing the GIS audit, understanding where the streetlights are throughout the town, and understanding or getting a better understanding of if your billing, as well as understanding the pole height, setback from the street, and the number of lanes, angle to the street, a lot of things that go into the design later on of your new LED system. Reconciling the data that we find from our audit with your utility bills. So typically we have found that utilities are overbilling municipalities from anywhere from 5 to 10% throughout the country. So we want to compare what we find in the field and understand to make sure that you're being billed correctly, and reconcile that to make sure that you're being charged for the correct number of fixtures as well as the correct fixture types. Doing a street-by-street design. So it's a little bit tough to show, but in certain areas where, let's say, there is a more arterial street where there's more lanes and high traffic, that will require a different type of photometric design than, say, a cul-de-sac. So for residential streeting, there's different lighting designs than for the high trafficked areas, and that's something we'll take into consideration when doing the conversion. So getting all those data points down the first time, and so that you have the best conversion once we do move to install. So this is very difficult. I will try and explain this as best I can. So the numbers, Andy provided me with your current streetlight utility bill. Roughly, the city pays around $160,000 a year for street lighting. And our proposed option would convert you to the rate change, would go to the city-owned streetlight rate, which I reference in this analysis here. That would drop your energy significantly. So your energy usage would then be around $53,000 per year. And when you own the system, you also have to maintain it. So that's something we take into consideration with our analysis. And overall, it's around a 60% reduction in your utility bill, just based off the information that I've been provided. And then when we would go into that design, there are opportunities where we could actually increase that savings as well. But yeah, overall, we're looking, this is $2 million over 20 years is what you'd roughly be saving.
You have little forms, or it's just this in my opinion?
Yeah.
We can send that afterwards, potentially.
Thank you, yeah.
Is it just, was it our document wasn't super clear? All right.
It's clear.
That's all right.
We'll provide the data to all.
Thank you.
Because I mean, this is really the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding's right here. So I mean, this is really where you see the significant savings.
So maybe you can reiterate, both of you can reiterate that again for both us and the TV audience. So approximately over 20 years, it would be
$2.1 million in energy and maintenance savings that the city would realize.
Thank you.
And the project would pay for itself in under 5 years. For the citywide conversion, and it says it's around 708 streetlights that are currently leased from AEP. And this is the worst case scenario. Like I mentioned earlier with acquisitions, we have data points where other municipalities have purchased their streetlight system, and this is in the worst case scenario, is at around 5-year payback. And we do expect to acquire, it's just the arm and the fixture head is what you'd be purchasing on those wooden poles. And we expect it to be well under the number proposed $300 that I have in this analysis here. So it'd be well under 5 years is what we're expecting for this conversion. Here's a better visual as to what that energy savings will look like. The blue line represents what the city currently pays in energy usage, and the gray line below would be your new energy costs for the city. This doesn't take into consideration maintenance, but that is only roughly around $10,000 to $12,000 from that other report. So it'd be dropping down from around that $160,000 is what you pay for that 2/3 of the system that's leased from AEP. It'd be going down to that $51,000 mark roughly. And what we've been discussing with Andy and Rob has been looking into the feasibility report as well as a citywide audit. The feasibility report would be a 3 to 5 page bulletproof understanding of what the options are for Athens in looking into this. That report will then be accompanied by the GIS mapping that we would collect in the field from our audit. At each streetlight, we're going to collect around 25 points of data, which will allow us to look at designing your LED replacement. And then we also will do that billing data reconciliation to make sure the city is being charged correctly, as well as acquisition support, as in reaching out to AEP and letting them, making them aware that Athens potentially is interested in acquiring the streetlight system from their utility, and phrasing it in a win-win, so that because AEP will always be providing that energy, so that you always have a good relationship with your utility. Are there any questions about this? Yes.
I had a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
You just, first of all, is it locked in that we have to continue getting the energy from AEP, or could we go through the SOPEC, NOPEC? And that provides because they would be now city, and the city purchased those, or
I can answer the question.
Yeah.
So, right now, the energy for this account comes via the tariffs set by the PUCO, so it's not through the third-party energy market. Now, it just so happens that our third-party energy market also is AEP at the moment, AEP Energy, which is a different provision. We will always pay transmission and distribution service costs to American Electric Power, but it's possible that these particular accounts, or this particular account, once we own, and since it's once we own, it's possible that we'll be able to get the generation costs on the open market, through SOPEC.
Right. Which right now for us has a higher renewable.
It does.
Power standard,
Right.
and I don't see the state providing any renewable standards anytime soon, so we have to do our own. The other question is, you mentioned small cell revenue. And after our long discussion about small cells and our enjoyment of the litigation process with certain entities in the state, where would that actually stand? Because I'm not reading that we can get small cell revenue.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit more about that specific to Ohio. Every state has different legislation about what telecoms can and can't do with small cells on public infrastructure. Where we think that there might be an opportunity for revenue is because the power is there, the fixture is there, that there might be an opportunity when a AT&T or another provider comes in and wants to put small cells around the city. They may say, you know what, it's cheaper for us just to lease this space on this light from you guys because there's already electricity there, and there's fiber on the pole that it's hanging on, than for us to build our own thing and run our own electricity to it. And so there's where the revenue will come from.
Because they would be, according to all the stuff that's come out from the small cell, they would be able to build that small cell themselves in our right-of-way.
Correct.
So hopefully they would go this way because it might be cheaper for them.
Correct.
And it would be a win-win.
Right.
And the third thing is we have a dark sky, star-friendly policy that is in effect in Athens. So any design implements, designed ideas would have to take that into consideration.
Absolutely, and that's a big concern in Arizona where the satellites and big telescopes are, because those were actually used to filter out orange light, and then when they redid all LEDs, they didn't filter out the correct lighting from the cities. So that is something to take into consideration, color, temperature, and making sure that all that light is going directional and not into the sky. So I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, and it's in our code.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. And as we've converted our own lights, a good example, if you look at the 5033 bypass lights, the old ones that were there before from time immemorial are the globe ones underneath. The new ones are the cutoff ones, so we direct a little bit more down. So this is something, that's another reason from a dark skies initiative, we think we can get more light down and less light up through this initiative beyond just saving money. That's another thought.
It's just, and people in television land, as Kip always likes to say, should be reminded of that, you know, if they're looking in and seeing places that may not be in up to grade with our dark sky ordinance. So, thank you. Those are my questions.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Grace also had a question as well. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, thank you.
I just, because we do have some light fixtures that we lease currently from AEP, and then some city-owned, would we be considering also converting city-owned, or are city-owned already LED? What all of the city-owned ones?
All the city-owned are already LED.
So we don't need to.
We got a few compact fluorescent left, but you know nothing is high-pressure sodium. Nothing is the old style. So that's something we've really made an effort to do in recent years.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Hetty, thank you. And I'll briefly mention too, I appreciate Mr. Stone for taking the initiative with this in the past, and thank you, Mr. Hetty, for initiating that process and getting us to this point. So, yes.
Yeah, I just thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to say a few things. I think it's a great opportunity. You know, we do a really good job of calling in about our street lights, but we spend a lot of time doing that as well. So, administrative coordinator in my office does that and spends a lot of time doing it. Some of it's a little more complicated because we have traffic signals on some of those, so the 200,000, the 160,000, that's where some of the number differences are. But the nice thing about LED, if we do go this route, is an LED fixture is designed for its location. So all of our other streetlights off AEP, they just throw light out and the globe is the only thing that controls them. I think on the slide that Morgan had, you couldn't hardly see, but on the end of a cul-de-sac, you can have a fixture that throws a round light. On a street, we can throw rectangular light. You actually put in less fixtures. And as well as our high pressure sodium, a lot of them are already probably at less than 50% of their original light. So they degrade pretty quickly. The mercury vapor is even worse, I believe, Morgan. So there's a case where we'll be able to design a fixture for each street, for each intersection. That fixture will put the light right where we want it. And we'll have actually a brighter, a warmer light, a whiter light than what we're seeing now with the. But it's pretty exciting that in the savings, AEP currently doesn't offer that tariff. As Andy mentioned, basically their tariff is we don't meter these street lights. They come right off of the distribution grid and they charge us a flat fee. And I believe it's about $13 a fixture.
Yeah, it's anywhere from I think $8 a fixture for the lowest wattage, shortest arm fixtures to over 20 for the highest wattage, longest arm fixtures. And that's a flat fee per month per light. So it's a lot of money. You can tell if we can buy them for $300, it seems like a pretty good idea if we're paying, you know, $12 to $20 a month for each fixture, and we can buy them for $300, then return that savings to us.
Definitely. And just to get you an idea, it'll drop roughly to around $3 per fixture just for the energy only to that fixture once it goes to city owned. So that's just what that savings will look like. But yeah, it would be well under 5 years.
Yeah, Councilmember Grace.
Just one other question. What is the anticipated life of the new fixtures? If, you know, so how long would the new fixtures last?
Yeah, so as Bob mentioned, the lumen depreciation is drastically less with an LED. Within 6 months of the current system, you're looking at 60% of that lumen output disappearing. So with an LED, it's about 5% over 5 to 10 years too. So you have a lot more light to work with over a longer period of time. And with every manufacturer that is currently on the market now, it comes with a 10-year warranty, but all of them are tested for 100,000 hours of useful life. So that's 22 and a half years. And so for the first 10 years, if anything were to be wrong with that fixture, you simply take it down, ship it to the manufacturer, and get a new one.
Wow, that's nice. I have a couple comments and a question. This is very relevant and apropos because Auditor Hecht, myself, the mayor recently had a couple of city meetings in which, again, lighting comes up as a concern for safety and the welfare of our citizens. And anyone who has a loved one in their life is also going to express concern. And we take an oath of office here as well, too, for the care and well-being of the citizens. So I think this is terribly relevant and super important for us to look at and consider on a lot of levels. So thank you for that. One concern I had or question regarding, you shared the acknowledgement that the university is nearby and that you said that your company takes into consideration in looking at what those lighting needs are. And so I was curious about what that process looks like. Is it surveys? Is it face-to-face conversations? Is it a combination of many factors with looking at the data that the city can provide? So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so the GIS audit will provide us with spatial recognition as to where each street light is. In many cases with universities, we want to reach out to whoever security is, understand areas where maybe there might be high crime or other areas of concern, pedestrian conflict, essentially, and want to make sure that those areas are especially well lit. In the design process, you have to sign off on the design in order for us to order material. Okay. So you will be getting the last approval. Otherwise, we will not be moving forward with anything else. So it is until you approve that design that we will then move forward with the process. And if something isn't up to your standards, we will then remap and redesign that streetlight system to then match what you would like here.
We'll approve. I guess, Council, if you really want to get into that level of detail, you can do that, but we'll vouch for it.
Sure.
Councilman, I think that's one of the neat things about if we move forward with this is we'll actually design a street lighting system where now we just said, well, we need light. AEP, can you put one on this pole? And there's no design to it. They just throw up they may have a chart for the amount of wattage, but this will allow us to, to actually have the opportunity then to go back and go through the whole city and say, this corridor needs more light. Student housing here. There's, we might think there's some crime there. So that's another exciting part of the look at the thing is a holistically and do a design.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Fall.
And that's a really good point, is because there has been numerous people who come before council to ask about increasing street lights in certain areas. So that would mean a new pole and new lighting, but also how do you increase, or how do you get public participation in the process of you going through and doing your audit?
So before we do the audit, it's an in-person audit. So we actually have an auditor comes here, has a little sign they put onto the car, and we will make sure that the PR is aware that an auditor will be going to each streetlight system or each streetlight in the city, and everyone's aware of it, because in many cases our auditors get pulled over or draw a lot of attention to them because they are underneath streetlights and collecting this data. But no, we want to work with you to make sure that everyone is aware of the conversion so it doesn't come by surprise.
Well, and we are going through our comprehensive plan right now, which some of the questions that have been put forward in our public hearings, neighborhood and citywide, is points of concern for pedestrians. And we have our pedestrian bicycle plan. So those sort of things should be included with the audit of making sure that certain areas that have been identified are looked at.
Mm-hmm. And that blurry picture, that was the financial analysis. We will then run that for, say, if you wanted to install 3 streetlights here, how that would impact your bottom line, and provide you with that flexibility as to if you do need areas that don't already have existing lighting, how it's going to affect the overall look of the project overall.
Thank you, Mr. Melendrez. I believe we do have a couple of questions and comments, one from our auditor as well as from Councilmember Katsas. Our auditor first, please. Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
And this might be something that you want to talk about later, but
if you want to be on a mic.
My question is, how do we pay? What do we pay up front?
Yeah,
money things.
Well, we're gonna have to decide, and I was gonna talk about this actually. We're gonna have to decide how to finance it.
Sure.
So I mean, we could either scrape together cash through capital improvements and pay cash up front and then not have any type of financing. We can do a loan through a couple different sources. I know that the TANCO will facilitate that. we made a look at a local lender to do it. Something that I have to get smarter on, but House Bill 420 from several years ago that allowed you to basically borrow against future energy savings. That's what we did when we did the Perfection Group product. That would be probably the model under which we would want to do this if that provides some benefits in interest rates for us. There's a couple different directions we can go, but yeah, there will be an upfront cost, just like any other big project, and then we would recoup that over the first few years via decreased expenditures out of the general fund. That's where the street lights are paid from, by the way. Is the general fund.
Thank you. Councilmember Grace and then Councilmember Katsas.
At what point does the whole amount need to be paid up front prior to the survey? Okay, that's like how much of this?
I can pay for the audit out of my budget.
Okay.
And the audit's, $20,000, I think, in that range. So I'll pay for it out of the city budget, and then we'll have to make that decision about how we're going to go, and we'll have much better numbers. And I'll come to you and say, this is how I think we ought to do it, and then we'll have an opportunity to make a decision whether we move forward or not.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Casas, if you can stand at the podium. Thank you, sir.
Good, thank you. Peter Katsas. I think about two questions. One is for administration, the other one for the presenter. Administration, I'm curious if it's, and this is just for clarification, is it just looking at the rented bulbs, or are we also, because I know LED technology has changed rapidly, so are we also looking at what we currently own and upgrading some of those units too?
It's not part of my plan right now. I'm really looking at trying to take over those rented high-pressure sodium lights from American Electric Power, but I suppose we could if we wanted to expand and look at our own system. Much of our own system has been designed in the last 20 years or in the last 10 to 5 years, so especially some of the sections from the Richland Avenue section, the US 33 and 50 section.
Both roundabouts.
Yeah, both roundabouts. Those have all been within the last 5 years or so.
Okay, and then my second question is the company. Do you only work with public entities, or do private citizens? Do they stop you on the street and say, "Hey, we would like to have, our light also upgraded to this type of technology"?
Go ahead, you can talk.
Yeah, so we only work with municipalities, actually. So only municipal projects are all we have, specifically exterior lighting, so street lights, floodlights, maybe parking lights, but nothing more than just that. So we just want to stick to our core thoughts, and in order to do street light correctly, it really does take sole focus, which is why we have narrowed our focus just on this little niche market that we own.
Thank you.
And how do you make your money?
So 70% is material, 20% is installation, 10% is Tango. Typically.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, or from the audience, I do want to thank our presenter, all the way from California, and obviously it's a lot of information for us to digest, and so I do appreciate that you will make the information and data accessible to all parties. Thank you, administration, again, for taking the lead on this. This, again, I think is very exciting, and from an engineering perspective as well, too. It's sort of like getting to redesign the needs of the whole city, really with much more intention than probably what happened as the city grew and changed. So this really is, I think, exciting endeavor. Any other comments from the administration? Okay. Thank you. I guess that concludes the evening. We are wrapping up around 8:28 p.m. Thank you. We are adjourned.